Hi friends, it's Lisa. Welcome back. Today I am reviewing the Karin Brushmarker Pro pens. Here are some of the exciting things we're going to create. Spoiler alert, I like these pens. I'm going to tell you more about them, but I wanted to show you kind of a few of the examples we'll be going through. I used 3 different types of watercolor paper, and 2 of them I have pictured here. The first one I used is the Karin Bristol Smooth, and then the second one I use is the Karin XL Watercolor. Now, here is that Bristol Smooth, and here is just an example of the brush marker. I really like that you can see the watercolor moving in and out of that pen. And then I also like the actual brush tip. It's not individual bristles, it's more of a foam tip, but I actually like that in this case. I find it a really positive experience. The first thing I'm doing is I wrote down Karin just to show kind of writing with the pen. Then I went ahead and put some color down, watercolored it out with a water brush. Then I'm watercoloring it out with the blender pen. The 60 set that I got includes 3 blender pens. Then I'm trying the tip to tip, where you have 2 tips and one flows a little bit into the other and then you watercolor it out. Kind of like a chameleon pen or chameleon alcohol marker. Then I've put some water down and added the marker into that. You can see that one of them I just left and it does wick out a bit. The other one I came back and added some additional water and was able to completely watercolor that mark out. You didn't see the initial mark, which was a really big positive for me. Then I did do the heavy and smooth lines just to show you that these are really great for hand lettering. I have no hand lettering experience. I am not good at that. I have 0 spelling acumen. So hand lettering seems kind of like a waste to me, because if it doesn't have a red squiggly line under it, I'm not going to know that it's spelled wrong. So that's all I need, is to hand letter something beautifully and it's spelled wrong. I'd be that like no regrets person getting a tattoo that spelled completely wrong. I wouldn't get a tattoo. I'm just not a tattoo person, but if I did, it would be spelled wrong. Anyway, so moving on, I am heat embossing these really cute stamps from Hero Arts. I believe it's called Decorations, but I put that a second ago. I was just chit-chatting away. Anyway, so I'm heat embossing these. If you haven't seen heat embossing before, go and check out my last video. I walk you through the whole process. It's one of my favorite techniques and a lot of fun. It's great especially for watercoloring, because the watercolor is contained in the little enclosed areas. These are on the second pad of paper I mentioned earlier, the Karin XL Watercolor, not the Bristol Smooth. I didn't really like the Bristol Smooth for this brush. I got it to try, but for this particular medium, I would suggest going with actual watercolor paper. So I'm starting here with putting the marker down onto dry paper, then taking my watercolor brush and spreading that out. In this case, it worked really well. On the next type of watercolor paper I try, this doesn't work, but we'll get there then. Here, on this type of watercolor paper, it works amazingly. I would suggest trying out your medium on the type of paper you're going to be using on a scrap before actually going to your end product, because sometimes you just don't know. It might just not work, which we'll see later. Now, I have for the flower we just colored and for this butterfly, I'm taking two different colors. So I've dropped both of those colors down and then left a little space in between. Then I'm coming back with my watercolor brush and blending those two together so you get a nice smooth gradation of color. But here on this flower, I'm taking just a little bit of the red at the tips and pulling it out. So these are actually quite small images. I'm pretty zoomed in here, and it doesn't take a lot of color to pull these out. One thing you will notice, these are not the same thing as a pan watercolor. So when you have a pan watercolor or watercolor out of a tube, you're manipulating physical pigment around. On these, they're ink, and so it's a little bit different. They're dye ink. The movement of the color is going to be different, as well as what you can do with it. So the dye ink does dissolve faster. You get a shorter gradation. If you are using a pigment, and of course it depends on which pigment, but if you're using a pigment, you're going to be able to get a lot more range than you will be with these markers. But you do get a lot of other benefits by going with a marker, such as ease and portability. So there's that. I personally like the look more of a pigmented watercolor, but I also have a life and things to do, so I really like the ease and convenience of the markers. There also are 60 different colors, so you can get a lot of really cool looks. One thing I didn't test, and I'm just thinking of this now, of course, is mixing colors. I did not test that at all. I think putting these on a palette and then mixing them with your watercolor brush would be a really cool thing to do. The one thing you can do, and I tested at the very beginning, is the tip to tip, where you start out with the color you put onto the tip of that marker, and then you blend out into the color of the original of the marker you're using. So you get a nice gradation. The problem with that is it's really hard to control where your gradation is. So if you need to do that twice on a picture, you can't ever completely match it up, is what I've found, which is why I go with the Copic markers rather than the chameleon markers. I think it's a really cool idea and I like it a lot, but I also find it hard to duplicate efforts. Now we're moving on to the second embossed area, and these I just did different colors, but I wanted to show you because they were just so cute. I think that these markers are really wonderful for small images like this. One thing you will note, I am not using the blender pen. I didn't find it worked very well for me. I found the watercolor brush pen, this watercolor brush that I'm using, and this is a Karin Brush watercolor brush. I really like the Karin Brush watercolor brushes. I've said that 5 times in the last 10 seconds. I'm sorry. But the Karin Brush one is really high quality. You get just the right amount of water. They're really easy to use. The only thing that is a little bit more difficult on them is getting water into the chamber. You kind of have to submerge the whole bottom part and push it a couple times. But it's not too bad. It's just a little bit more annoying than some of the other brush markers, brush pens, brushes, watercolor brushes, I don't know, words, blah, that I've used before. So if you're interested, the Karin Brush watercolor brushes are the ones I would suggest. I'm also off screen in between colors, just wiping the brush on a towel, on a little hand towel. You can do that on a piece of paper, on a paper towel, on a real towel, whatever just like pulls the extra color Here we are, real time. I'm going to talk through some stuff really quick. Typically, I voice over the video, but I've been doing some tests off screen, and I wanted to talk through those with you. First thing I did was I fussy cut out all of these little stamped images, and they were super cute. I will put on the screen in a few minutes the actual watercolor paper that I used with these, because I think that's important about what I'm going to say next. And it was the same paper that I used for this, which is what we'll talk about next. I bought a Thomas Kincaid coloring book. It has really cool outline images, and I should have brought it down. The book, this is a 9x12 piece of paper. The book is probably about this big. So this has been quite expanded, and it's printed on watercolor paper. Well, the book has this paper, and then when it opens to the next page, it'll have the colored image of this next page over on this side. Well, honestly, I can't think of a medium that wouldn't soak through that paper and ruin the picture on the back side. Even colored pencil, if you're using Gamsol or odorless mineral spirits, is gonna affect the back page, and more importantly, that picture might come through. So what I did was cut down the spine of the paper and then scanned it in and printed out. Well, I printed out on watercolor paper. It's the same watercolor paper that I used to stamp and emboss these. These markers worked really well on this paper. Well, apparently laser jet ink is not good for watercoloring, which was really disappointing because this was a very light yellow, and you can see just even the little strokes that I made. This is a light blue, and it just, the ink just goes, ugh. So that was a really sad development. Absolutely nothing against the Karin markers. Like, it's not their fault. The one thing you can do with this, and what I plan to do in the future, is to print it off on my Nina 80-pound cardstock and color it with my alcohol markers. The laser jet ink is completely fine to use with those. It is not fine to use with these Karin Brushmarkers. I'm thinking that perhaps the other type of ink, the laser ink, whatever the other type of ink that you typically find in like an office toner, might work with the brush pens. I'm not sure. I don't have one. I have no plans of buying one. I have nowhere to put another printer. So, but if you have a printer that you print out stuff and then foil it, that's the kind of printer I'm talking about. If you do and you try it, let me know. I'd love to know. Anyway, so that was a fail. Don't think you can do that. It was a very sad moment. Then I went out to Hobby Lobby and got these 2 Prima watercolor coloring books. I'm going to show you this in just a second. So just FYI, you can watercolor on these, but this paper is a little bit different than the paper that I used for this. It just doesn't watercolor with these as well. The first thing I did is I put down the marker and then watered with my water brush over it to try and drag out the color. The same exact way I did over here. It looked like crap. It just looks so bad. So this whole section right here is that technique. Then I tried, and I did it over here. So I just put a line of this darker color, then a line of the lighter color, and I used the blender from Brushmarker, the Karin Brushmarker blender pen, and I tried to blend those together. You can see it pilled up the paper, and it didn't work. So next I tried just with the markers. So I put a layer of the red down, then I brushed up into it with the lighter color, and then I did that over top again. That is definitely a way to go about this. You can definitely do that technique here. You can see where I did use the brush marker with this darker blue, and it works to some extent. It just doesn't work great. The yellow and the black are just dry brushed on there. What did work, and ignore this weird black fuzzy area, I'll explain that in a second. What did work was putting the water down first and then putting the marker on. So let me do a quick test of that so I can show you. But that definitely worked. So you just kind of put the water down where you want it. This is a technique where you have to go lightest to darkest though. So just in case you kind of go over, and then see, like I got over on her a little bit. And just wherever you want the color to be the deepest, then you can go back in and run over it. I would suggest with this method to let that section dry before moving on to the surrounding sections. So here I did the blue, then the yellow in that same technique. Then I tried to do the black in that same technique, but it kind of ran and wasn't moving and giving me the color I wanted. So up here is where I did that. I tried to do this technique I just showed you with the black. Then up here on the top, I just went straight to paper and had no issues. So there is that. I wanted to show you. So you can definitely watercolor with these Prima pads. So this one's the Prima Princess. Both of them are 8 by 10. The other one that I got is the Foil Watercolor Coloring Book. It also is 8 by 10, and it also has 24 different pages. Here is the one I finished. I did the same technique I just showed you. The only thing that was different at all was here on these blue, I put a darker color on the edge and a lighter color in the middle, and then just kind of watercolored them together. So that was really easy. I did go along all the edges, paint out with a little bit of water, and then drew this yellow edge around them and faded that out. I did go in sections though. I would have I went like right here, and then I moved down to here because you just can't get the whole thing wet enough and then go around. I did have a slight issue right there, but I'm trying to decide if I want to put this up in my house or cut it down into a card. Here is a quick time video of me doing another one of those pages in that watercolor coloring book from Prima. This time I did the background first and then colored in the flowers individually. I thought that might be easier. I was able to get the background done a whole lot faster. So here is that one completely finished, dried, everything. I did put these through my die cutting machine a time or two just to kind of flatten them out. And I haven't decided what I'm going to do with them, but I'm sure you'll see them again. I think they turned out really cute. I'm really excited to be able to do this when I'm watching TV after work and just need to relax. I think that's going to be a prime time for that. Then here are all these super cute little embellishment kind of things that I can use on cards. I haven't made any cards from any of this. I wanted to just give you my overall impressions and thoughts of the watercolor brush pens from Karin. I think they're really great. I'm really excited to use them. Of course, like any other media, they're not 100% perfect, but really nothing in life is. I think they're a really great investment. I was able to get mine for $110, but you just will have to decide, find where you can get them the lowest price, and then decide if they're worth it for you. I hope this was helpful. One thing I did want to mention, on my website, terrylisacreates.com, I am trying to create a crafty community, so everybody who likes paper crafting is welcome to come and join. I have a lot of really cool plans for this. If you're interested, just come on over. All you have to do is hit the register button and you'll be off to the races. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did hear some other videos you might enjoy, if you're interested in subscribing, you can go ahead and click that button. And I hope you guys have an absolutely wonderful, amazing day and a great week. Bye.